So that brings us on to false skeptics. I briefly touched on this earlier on, skeptics with a C. Now, I need to explain the no true Scotsman fallacy first to explain why this isn't the no true Scotsman fallacy. No true Scotsman fallacy is that a Scotsman, as he would, was eating his porridge one day. I didn't make this story up. It's not just me being English. No, it generally is how the story goes. He was sat eating his porridge one day in a kilt and a claymore, and he was reading in the newspaper. It said in the newspaper, down in England, there's been a murder. Well, he says, well, no Scotsman would do that. No Scotsman would do that. Wait till the next day, the newspaper comes along again, and it says the murderer was from Aberdeen. And he says, no true Scotsman would do that. Christians are guilty of this quite a lot. If you say to one Christian group, well, this Christian group believes this, they'll say, well, they're not true Christians. This isn't me saying, these aren't true skeptics, they don't follow my principles. It's the fact that there are specific ways to do skepticism, and if you don't use those particular methods, you aren't actually a skeptic. If you just look at one side of the evidence, if you don't look at what all the arguments say, if you don't look at what all the evidence says, you're not doing it properly. You can say, no, you're doing that wrong. If someone's saying, well, climate change is all, it's all a lie, well, have you seen all the sides of it? No, I just read this one book by David Icke. So you take 9/11 conspiracy theory. Like I said earlier, they'll get one picture that supports their argument, ignore the other pictures that actually go against their argument. David Icke, what can I say about David Icke? He thinks the royal family are lizards. That's pretty much all I can say about David Icke. Go to the David Icke forums. It is absolutely mental. It really is. There's a wonderful picture, it ties in with 9/11 on the David Icke forums, and it's of the Cookie Monster from Sesame Street. And he's eating the Twin Towers, and it says, Children's Television Workshop at the top, CTW, and it's got a moon in there, it's got a few other things. And basically, people on the David Icke forum have said, this was doing 1976, it predicts 9/11. Look, the Cookie Monster is eating at the exact points where the planes hit. There's a crescent moon, that's Islamic. CTW, Children's Television Workshop, backwards, that's World Trade Center. Down there's a Masonic board. And there's all sorts apparently in this image that allegedly say it is predating 9/11. I'm not just stealing it, Stuart. Thank you for Stuart Ritchie for pointing it out for us. Give him a round of applause. Okay, Holocaust denial. Now, Holocaust denial is basically either saying the Holocaust didn't happen or it wasn't as bad. In some European countries, it's actually illegal to be a Holocaust denier. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think people should be allowed to say, I don't believe the Holocaust existed, as much as people are allowed to say they think 9/11 was an inside job. If we say, no, you can't believe that, you can't say that, then, well, where does that stop? Okay, if it's causing someone damage, if it's causing someone harm, if you're physically causing problems because of it, then yes, make that part of it illegal. But just to be a denier, I think, is trampling on free speech as much as saying, well, you can't draw Muhammad. AIDS denial. This is probably the first really dangerous one on there, saying AIDS doesn't exist or HIV doesn't lead to AIDS. And there are large organizations, especially in America, which try and campaign and say HIV does not lead to AIDS. And a lot of the people in this campaign have died of AIDS-related illnesses. But the organizations always, always cover it up and say, no, they didn't die of that until you get the death certificate, and it turns out they did. So that is actually dangerous. It can kill people. Anti-vaxxers as well. These can kill people, saying, well, no, don't take vaccinations. It's fine. I didn't have a vaccination. I was fine. Nothing happened to me. Yeah, but everyone around you had vaccinations. That's why you're fine. Saying don't get vaccinations is wrong. It is dangerous. And it goes back really to this whole big argument from the late 90s of the MMR jab, which was propagated by Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Mr. Andrew Wakefield. And it said that the MMR jab causes autism. It didn't. It was done on 12 people at a kid's party. It did not cause autism. There was no evidence whatsoever to link to it, which is now why he's now been struck off. Global warming skeptics. I've lost track of the amount of time people have come to us on our forum or on our email and said, we're wanting to try and find a global warming skeptic to argue on one side of this debate. It's like, well, it's not us. We're not saying, well, we don't believe in global warming. Global warming, climate change is probably more accurate, is happening. And I'm sure we are talking about that later on in more detail, so I won't labour on that. But ultimately, do we make a difference? Do skeptics make a difference? Yeah, we do actually. There's just a brief handful here. Top left, we have Mr. Simon Perry, who was responsible for what has been dubbed by Jack of Kent the Quacklash, which was when Simon Singh's case hit. And Simon Perry wrote lots and lots of letters, wrote hundreds of letters to the trading standards around the UK, and chiropractic organisations had to change their website. They had to get rid of all of the erroneous claims they were making, to the extent where the GCC, General Chiropractic Council, actually sent an email out and said, no, take down your website, take down your website. Or was it the BCA who did that? Yes, it was Tim. Yes, it was. Sorry, so it was neither of them. I made that up. Don't trust me. Go and check these facts out for yourself. Simon Singh, of course, we already mentioned. Trick or Treatment, wrote it with Edzard Ernst. He's fighting the libel campaign now. James Randi, we've already mentioned. Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, evolutionary biologist, written a lot of great stuff on evolutionary biology, but everyone knows him as an atheist. And whenever you see him, especially on Fox News, it's always Richard Dawkins, atheist. Sorry, it's not an aside. Does anyone watch Fox News? It's the funniest thing in the world, isn't it? It's great. This guy down here, I love this, Captain Disillusion. Go to YouTube, check out Captain Disillusion. He's a YouTube crusader. He takes these surreal, bizarre, strange videos off YouTube, say a ghost video, something like that, and he explains exactly how it's done. He's fantastic. Richard Wiseman, we've got coming along later on, the chair of the Public Understanding of Psychology. Has done a lot of work with the public. A lot of information has been got out there thanks to him. He's going around to these groups like this, doing these talks, telling people, filling them in on the details they know. Tim Minchin, Australian gentleman. He's a writer, a singer, a performer. He wrote what has been called the Skeptics Anthem, Storm. There's a movie of that now it should be on YouTube soon. Hugh Laurie, Stephen Fry themselves are quite well-known skeptics. They appeared on the James Randi show in the early 1990s. But now Hugh Laurie plays the very strong, skeptical, atheistic Dr. House on mainstream national American television. 15, 20 years ago, you wouldn't have got that. Ricky Gervais, a stand-up comedian, made a big-budget Hollywood film about how religion was all made up and just a fairy tale and got it out there. And, of course, people in the room like this. People in the room like this, without you, these people wouldn't be half as successful as they are. Changes wouldn't be happening. The 1023 campaign wouldn't have happened. There are about 30 of these groups all over the UK, each one of them getting anywhere from 30 to 200 or 300 people down in London. Hundreds of people all around the UK coming together in groups like this, making a difference, making a change, doing something active about it. Finally, what if you're wrong? Well, I suppose first of all, what if you're wrong on what? And what if I'm wrong and homeopathy works? Brilliant, cheap, safe medical alternative. You know, it's great. If homeopathy did work, it would revolutionise medicine. If ghosts were real, fantastic. You know, our loved ones are still there. We don't just end when the end of life comes. We get to carry on, fantastic. If there's a God, well, which God are we going to argue about? Personally, I don't want the Christian one. I'm in a little trouble with him if he is there. So that's kind of it. And just brings us on to current slide, 42, yes, Edinburgh Skeptics, edinburgh.skepticismpub.org. Got about 5 minutes left, time for a question if anyone has one. But before that, I want my round of applause.